Now we're going to get into the proof of concept. I can't say for sure what technology was used, but I can show you something that reproduces all of the same phenomena. Seen this guy, Nikola Tesla. He can generate all of these various pieces of evidence, all these different phenomena. So can John Hutchison. When he tried to replicate the work of Nikola Tesla, he discovered all of these characteristics. And all of those characteristics were found at the World Trade Center site. Let's notice this metal luminescence without heat. Hot things glow, but not everything that glows is hot. George Pigott got a patent just about 100 years ago, a little over 100 years ago. Levitation. He's got a static field, and he's doing some other things with putting in some kind of energy, and he's got these static balls, these steel balls levitating. I think they're actually silver. And Thomas Townsend Brown also looked into the same area about using electricity. And then Ed Leedskalnin, who built Coral Castle. Here's John Hutchison standing in front of the Great Pyramid. There's a person down here in the background. You can see they're almost 2 blocks tall. Well, that's about the same height as this doorway of Coral Castle. So they're about the same size blocks. They're 15 tons each. So this guy built his castle by himself. We don't know how this one was built. We can only guess. Well, let's look at how John Hutchison's more of work here. This is an iron block. It's 2 inches by 2 inches by 7 inches tall, solid iron block. And when he puts it in his system, it buckles over, and you can see some fuming here. And it actually is colder to the touch at the end of this. And here we get to see it happen. And we're going to compare it to the fuming door handles from 9/11. Here's the door handle. Yep, it's a cold process. Solid iron. And this fuming, which is interesting. The car window is broken open here. We're going to look at some other things about the weird fires. I can't call them regular fire because I don't know that. The weird fire, just to note that it's not something that you know for sure what it is. It's glowing, but the paper doesn't seem to burn. If this was glowing because it's hot, it'd have to be at least 1,200 degrees centigrade. Aluminum melts at a little over 600 degrees centigrade. It's not a puddle. This aluminum is not a puddle, so how hot can it be? And this igloo cooler and the plastic trash can are not melted. The paper is not burned either on the ground. So what is that color? And another weird thing about this, right across the street over here is the Burger King. And inside they're flipping burgers, cooking burgers for the firefighters. Not serving to the customers, and then the building across the street was missing. It's just a weird sight. Now this van is also interesting that, you get all this something looks like it's on fire, weird fires there. This van down here has a fire on the side of it. What's burning? And if you say falling debris that was on fire hit these vehicles, why didn't it hit anything else? And how's it, under the vehicle? It's just very strange. This Park Place is several blocks north. Now here's John's boat experiment. Well, what it shows is when he turns off his gizmo, then the boat lights up with weird fires. And the cars lit up right after the tower's demise, not during, right after, as though it was right after something got turned off. This is another interesting, at the WTC, how this beam curled up. Actually, that was right across the street. That was in Bankers Trust. These are John Hutchison's samples. Notice there's no creases in the corners. I should have found the picture of holding this one like this. Yeah. Vitamins? But it curls up like that, like at room temperature. And this is a video that hopefully will run. There we go. It wiggles back and forth. Now watch this thing. It's going to come apart in here. It's starting to come apart. Weird things happen. Some other weird things that happened were roundish holes in the outer pane of windows. They weren't necessarily through both panes. That's strange. Throw a rock through a window, it breaks the window because the window is brittle and it bends, and brittle materials are weak in tension, so it shatters the glass. So how do you get a round hole without cracks running out? Turns out somebody replicated that very thing. This is my analogy saying, okay, if you drop a rock in a pond, it ripples outwards. Maybe something like that is what ripples outwards with longitudinal waves that causes the glass to break in a rounded pattern. Now let's think about hurricanes. What do? Well, Hurricane Andrew drove this 2x4 through a tree. Piece of plywood. And with tornadoes, I'm sure you've all heard about straw through trees. It's not because they're flying fast. Something weird is going on. There's John Hutchison's sample with a butter knife in a piece of aluminum. He also has one with wood in the aluminum. If the aluminum's hot enough to melt, the wood would have burned up. So it's strange. Now, when I found these, you can see the blow-ups. I wondered, why on earth would the car door be peeling split thickness? It's not a laminated structure. Didn't know what that meant, but it was definitely a category of data, and I put it aside. Later, when I found John Hutchison's work, wow, he can peel open extruded aluminum. That's not laminated, it's extruded. And we have these coins from the World Trade Center. People like to say they're melted together. I point out that zinc melts before copper does. It also boils before copper melts. So that would likely explode, but it's one of the lowest, zinc is one of the lowest melting point materials. So what gives? Why is this stuff stuck together? And this is the only surviving file cabinet from Ben & Jerry's ice cream store. Here's the piece of wood embedded in the aluminum from John Hutchison's work without elevated temperature. Same with these. WTC6 with these cylindrical holes in it. Well, here's John Hutchison's aluminum sample with cylindrical holes in it. It's as though there's a pencil line in space around which material at the same radius is dustified. And if you had a lot of those vertically here, you would end up with dustified cylindrical columns. But there's no way you could get a drill in there and turn it sideways. It's parallel to the surface, and it just starts right here. The end of this bar is solid. Let's look at some other similarities with hurricanes. kind of like a big Tesla coil. And come to think of it, ahead of a storm system, people feel the storm coming. Birds know to head for cover. You can feel the static field ahead of the storm. Here's another thing about storm systems. I don't know if this needs a click or not. This is from this past spring in Texas, where there's a bunch of tornadoes, and you had flying trucks.
It went across a transport company, trees flying through the air, semi, the trailers, there you go, a couple of semi, look at that, the beds of the trailers hurling, twirling around in the sky and then dropping down from at least 50 feet high down into the ground. We saw trees, there goes another semi.
And it's spinning.
It's spinning, down it comes, bang, lands on its nose right down at the ground. Big piece of a tree there that just got hurled up, I believe it was. So certainly we have seen a destructive tornado on the south side of Dallas, still within parts of the area near south of Grapevine, north of Arlington, a possible tornado in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex area, as well as over on the east side of Dallas, in toward the area around the Mesquite area, just to the west of Mesquite and east of Dallas.
Those are flying trucks. I would say that's anti-gravity. It's not a vacuum. And people who've been picked up in funnel clouds can still breathe. Remember we saw before where people had been levitated during WTC2's demise, or WTC1's. So here we have also the front of Bankers Trust. This was the only non-WTC building that was severely damaged. It wasn't destroyed that day. They actually repaired it. Once they repaired it, they started taking it apart. Huh? They got it down to this level where they had repaired it in deconstruction there. When they got it down to that level, that's the area that had been repaired. It looks like it's been at the bottom of the ocean for 100 years. Extreme degradation, and it makes one wonder, was the building continuing to disintegrate, and that's why they had to take it down after they repaired it. And it took them 10 years to take it apart.